I decided to do my project on the civil war in Yemen. So a little bit of background information about Yemen's civil war includes that it officially began in the late 2014 time when the Houthi forces took control of the capital Sana'a and the majority of the country. The Houthis are Iranian aligned, and in order to combat the Houthis, Saudi Arabia, backed by the United States, led an attack against the Houthis. Some important moments during this time include in 2016, airports to and from Yemen were closed. In 2017, the old president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, was killed. Also in 2017, many other travel routes were closed, including ports and roads. And in 2018, the UAE, or the United Arab Emirates, began their attacks with Yemen. So due to the civil war, civilians have greatly suffered. They have had a lack of basic service, such as food, medicine, and other humanitarian aid. The economy has crashed. Their government is broken, and they are lacking education and many health services. So the Houthi forces are unlawfully impeding the delivery of desperately needed humanitarian aid. And due to this, the UN has stated that this is the world's largest humanitarian catastrophe. 14 million people are at risk of starvation and repeated outbreak of diseases that include cholera. Saudi Arabia has led restrictions on imports, such as the delivery of fuel tanks, and they have also closed many ports, in which this has stopped goods from entering the Houthi seaports. Saudi Arabia is closing them so that the Houthi people are not able to get resources, but the Houthi people are closing off the other ports for aid so that their civilians cannot get aid. But the fuel is needed to power generators for hospitals and to pump clean water. The Houthis have blocked and confiscated food and medical supplies and imposed many restrictions on aid workers and have interfered with aid delivery. And thousands have been displaced from their homes due to the bombings, in which their homes are now destroyed. So for the attacks, both sides have attacked activists and journalists, which is a huge worldwide broken norm. The Houthi forces have also taken hostages, in which they've beaten, tortured, and raped them. There have been at least 16 documented cases of hostages in which they were used to extort money or exchange prisoners. And they have still only released some of them. There have also been a list of civilians who have quote-unquote disappeared, in which the civilians believe they have been murdered. These civilians who have disappeared include activists, journalists, lawyers, rights defenders, students, and people of the Baha'i religious community. And all of these kidnappings are war crimes under the UN law. There have also been unlawful airstrikes, in which they are purposely striking homes, schools, hospitals, and mosques. There have also been accounts of them bombing a wedding in 2018, killing 22 people, including 8 children, and also bombing a school bus, killing 26 children. Both sides are also using banned weapons. The Houthi forces have used landmines and torture, while the Saudi-led coalition has used cluster munitions. So, going global, the Houthi forces fire ballistic missiles at Saudi Arabia now. And the United States has multiple drone strikes. There's also been a great deal of terrorism within Yemen due to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. And up to 2016, Al-Qaeda controlled a great deal of territory in Yemen. So the types of war seen in Yemen include total, limited, and civil. With the civil war, it's the Houthi people fighting with Yemen, in which the Houthis want an Iranian-aligned government, while Yemen wants their president Abdu Rabi Mansour as president. For the total and limited wars, it is by the United States, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. They are trying to get Yemen and Houthi forces to stop their civil war. They want them to enact a democratic government, and they want them to deliver aid to their people. The types of conflict seen in Yemen include the ideological, because they are killing and imprisoning the Baha'i religious community. They want their government to be Iranian-backed, but Yemen wants their Saudi-backed government. They have conflicts of interest with government and economy by closing ports, aid, and airports. And there's also the unconventional conflicts of terrorism by Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. There's also been signals of weapons of mass destruction being used. The use of white phosphorus by Saudi Arabia from 2015 to 2019 is breaking many United Nations laws. The United States is actually the supplier of the white phosphorus to Saudi Arabia. We supplied it for quote-unquote smoke screens and warning signals. But Saudi Arabia is detonating these, in which the white phosphorus automatically ignites with the air to create thick white smoke that burns to the bone and maims its victims. So Yemen right now, this has been a 5-year civil war, with tensions leading back all the way into the 1990s. From the UN, Yemen has been the worst humanitarian crisis. And the United Nations has also stated that the US, Saudi Arabia, and UAE are all complacent in multiple war crimes. And both sides have multiple violations. And things are just getting worse. Saudi Arabia is trying to lead peace talks and reconciliation, but this is causing more unrest, more ports closing, more starvation and cholera. And there have been many more crimes, including child soldiers being used, more kidnapping, and more airstrikes. So looking at it by the numbers, 14 million people are at risk of starvation and death due to the outbreaks of cholera and not having enough food available. 6,800 people have been killed, and these are only the civilians. 10,000 people have been wounded, and that's just up until 2018. And 3 million women and girls are at risk of starvation. At risk of violence. These are my resources.